Hello and welcome to another reading of the book of Luke. We're in chapter 23, and this is probably one of the most talked about portions of Jesus' life. The most controversial. Because what Jesus did is not what your typical hero in a make-believe story does. When you have a hero in a make-believe story, they come in, they have a tough battle where, it's starting to lose, now it's starting to win, start to lose, start to win, and they come out victorious, and everyone's happy, and everyone has a happy ending. But in reality, we know that we don't always have happy endings, do we? And in reality, this story plays out exactly how it had to play out. Because you see, we required a hero, and the hero had to sacrifice something for us because of what we deserve. Because as people who are not all good all the time, as a human being who makes mistakes, and as a sovereign creator of the universe who desires for us to make the wise choice, to do the good thing for others, but yet leaves it to our choosing, gives us the free will to make our own life, our own path, there hangs this incredible cliffhanger moment in all of our lives of what are we going to do? What's going to happen? And in this moment, Jesus pays the price. God's Son pays a price for us, the only way it could happen, but not the way anyone expected it to happen. And this chapter starts off, verse 1, let's get started. Everyone in the council got up and led Jesus off to Pilate. They started accusing him and said, "We caught this man trying to get our people to riot and to stop paying taxes to the emperor. He also claims that he is the Messiah, our king." Pilate asked Jesus, "Are you the king of the Jews?" "Those are your words," Jesus answered. Pilate told the chief priests and the crowd, "I don't find him guilty of anything." But they all kept on saying, "He has been teaching and causing trouble all over Judea. He started in Galilee and has now come all the way here." Pause a second. Pilate wasn't finding Jesus guilty of anything. And he was about to dismiss the whole matter, but was in a really tough spot because he knew he had an uprising potential on his hands depending on what decision he made. Then they said the magic words. They gave him an out. They said, "He started in Galilee and has now come all the way here." That's what Pilate was looking for. This is the loophole. This gives him a scapegoat. And what does Pilate do next? Let's read and see. When Pilate heard this, he asked, "Is this man from Galilee?" After Pilate learned that Jesus came from the region ruled by Herod, he sent him to Herod, who was in Jerusalem at the time. For a long time, Herod had wanted to see Jesus and was very happy because he finally had his chance. He had heard many things about Jesus and hoped to see him work a miracle. Herod asked him a lot of questions, but Jesus did not answer. Then the chief priests and the teachers of the law of Moses stood up and accused him of all kinds of bad things. Herod and his soldiers made fun of Jesus and insulted him. They put a fine robe on him and sent him back to Pilate. That same day, Herod and Pilate became friends, even though they had been enemies before this. Pilate called together the chief priests, the leaders, and the people. He told them, "You brought Jesus to me and said he was a troublemaker. But I have questioned him here in front of you, and I have not found him guilty of anything that you say he has done. Herod didn't find him guilty either and sent him back. This man doesn't deserve to be put to death. I will just have him beaten with a whip and set free." But the whole crowd shouted, "Kill Jesus! Give us Barabbas!" Now Barabbas was in jail because he had started a riot in the city and had murdered someone. Pilate wanted to set Jesus free, so he spoke again to the crowds. But they kept shouting, "Nail him to a cross! Nail him to a cross!" Pilate spoke to them a third time. "But what crime has he done? I have not found him guilty of anything for which he should be put to death. I will have him beaten with a whip and set free." The people kept on shouting as loud as they could for Jesus to be put to death. Finally, Pilate gave in. He freed the man who was in jail for rioting and murder because he was the one the crowd wanted to be set free. Then Pilate handed Jesus over for them to do what they wanted with him. As Jesus was being led away, some soldiers grabbed hold of a man from Cyrene named Simon. He was coming in from the fields, but they put the cross on him and made him carry it behind Jesus. Pause just a second. There's a few things I want to point out. First of all, we just see that Jesus is carrying a cross. The cross is in two sections. The cross has a vertical section, a post, if you may, that will go into the ground on the site where the cross is to be erected. And then there's going to be a horizontal piece that then was notched. It would fit into the cross like so. And that piece has where the criminal would be attached with their arms to the horizontal piece, thus giving that support. And then the feet would be attached. Now, in this case, the part Jesus is carrying is the horizontal piece. That was very typical to make the criminal do this, right? Well, Jesus is struggling to carry it because, unlike most criminals, he's beaten to a pulp before this even begins. And so he's struggling through the streets. He's bloody. He's hurting. He's probably got broken bones at this point, and he's trying to carry this thing through these streets as they're whipping and telling him. Well, the soldiers get frustrated because he's not moving quick enough. They've got a schedule. They're soldiers. They got to be on time and be where they got to get. And so they're like, okay, we got to find somebody to carry this for him. And they pick this guy out of the crowd named Simon and say, you've got to carry this. Now, in this situation, you're not allowed to say, no, pick somebody else. No. Remember, this is Roman occupation. Soldiers tell you what to do, and they have the authority to take you out if you don't do what they say. So everyone knew, whatever they say, you got to do. So this guy Simon, it tells in other scripture, Mark chapter 15 gives us a couple more details about Simon that we don't see here in Luke. In Mark, it explains that Simon was traveling with two of his sons, probably for Passover. That's what everyone is here in the city for, is Passover. He's traveling with his two sons, probably about 12 years old. And these two sons named Alexander and Rufus. Imagine what it was like for these boys. You're standing with your dad. There's this huge crowd gathered. Everyone's angry and they're hollering and something's happening. As you get close enough to see what's going on, you see this man who was beaten to just an inch of death, trying to carry this cross, probably on the ground. The soldiers look around. They point to your dad and order him to come help. Now, the dad can't say, hey, I'm with my two sons. Who's going to take care of my boys? We're from out of town. No, he just has to do what he's told. So the two sons are like, Dad? Dad's taken. Now the boys have to do whatever they can to try to keep up with this crowd and scene so they don't lose their dad. And when you're a 12-year-old in a crowd, it's easy to get pushed away, pressed to the back of the crowd. So they had to press and fight their way through to try to keep up with Dad, who by a certain point has got blood all over him. Because while he's carrying this section across, it's going to get on him. And by the time he gets to the end, I can only imagine how Simon looked as his boys looked at their dad with this other man's blood all over him, who was just forced to carry this, probably way out of their intention of what they were there to do. They were there to worship for Passover, and they were brought to this instead. This would be seared in the minds of these boys for life. This experience would be something that they would talk about with their generations to come. Another viewpoint, another aspect of an epic story that we all know. And everyone had their own witnessing point of view. The reason everyone talked about this for centuries after, and it continues to today, was because so many witnessed it. So many had it seared in their minds from this experience that you could never forget. Let's continue reading. A large crowd was following Jesus, and in the crowd a lot of women were crying and weeping for him. Jesus turned to the women and said, "Women of Jerusalem, don't cry for me. Cry for yourselves and for your children. Someday, people will say, women who never had children are really fortunate. At that time, everyone will say to the mountains, 'Fall on us.' They will say to the hills, 'Hide us.' And if this can happen when the wood is green, what do you think will happen when it is dry?" 2 criminals were led out to be put to death with Jesus. When the soldiers came to the place called the Skull, they nailed Jesus to a cross. They also nailed the 2 criminals to crosses, one on each side of Jesus. Jesus said, "Father, forgive these people. They don't know what they're doing." While the crowd stood there watching Jesus, the soldiers gambled for his clothes. The leaders insulted him by saying, "He saved others. Now he should save himself, if he really is God's chosen Messiah." The soldiers made fun of Jesus and brought him some wine. They said, "If you are the king of the Jews, save yourself." Above him was a sign that said, "This is the King of the Jews." One of the criminals hanging there also insulted Jesus by saying, "Aren't you the Messiah? Save yourself and save us." But the other criminal told the first one off. "Don't you fear God? Aren't you getting the same punishment as this man? We got what was coming to us, but he didn't do anything wrong." Then he said to Jesus, "Remember me when you come into power." Jesus replied, "I promise that today you will be with me in paradise." Around noon, the sky turned dark and stayed that way until the middle of the afternoon. The sun stopped shining, and the curtain in the temple split down the middle. Jesus shouted, "Father, I put myself in your hands." Then he died. When the Roman officer saw what had happened, he praised God and said, "Jesus must really have been a good man." A crowd had gathered to see the terrible sight. Then after they had seen it, they felt brokenhearted and went home. All of Jesus' close friends and the women who had come with him from Galilee stood at a distance and watched. You need to really let this sink in. The crowd was brokenhearted, defeated, discouraged. It was time to go home. It was over. We lost. Jesus didn't stop this horrible execution. He didn't stop it. It happened. Maybe he couldn't stop it. Maybe he wasn't who he said it was. Doubt was riddled throughout the supporters. It was hopelessness. The story seemed to be over. We were going home with our tails between our legs. The person who we have been following, the person who we believed in, was just publicly executed in front of everyone. The public saw it happen. No one is here saying, "Hey, let's wait and see what's going to happen next. Come on, guys. Hey, everybody, it's going to be okay. Just hang in there." Nobody's saying this at this point. Nobody is saying that. Nobody's showing hope. Everyone was sad. This wasn't a moment of, "Oh, get ready, what's about to happen." No, it's not at all. And here's the crazy thing. The whole world at that time, the known world at that time, was witnessing it. Because at the moment this happened, Jews from all over had come together to this one location for the convention, for the conference, for the time of Passover. Everybody was represented from every region was there. So as this happened, this meant that as they all went home now, they would take with them the news of what they just witnessed from all these different regions, from all these different places. How interesting this would happen at this exact moment in time, when everyone was together in one place, in the right place, at the right time to see this for themselves. Let's read on. There was a man named Joseph who was from Arimathea in Judea. Joseph was a good and honest man, and he was eager for God's kingdom to come. He was also a member of the council, but he did not agree with what they had decided. Joseph went to Pilate and asked for Jesus' body. He took the body down from the cross and wrapped it in fine cloth. Then he put it in a tomb that had been cut out of a solid rock and had never been used. It was Friday, and the Sabbath was about to begin. The women who had come with Jesus from Galilee followed Joseph and watched how Jesus' body was placed in the tomb. Then they went to prepare some sweet-smelling spices for his burial. But on the Sabbath they rested, as the law of Moses commands. I don't even know what to say. The story is over. But there's still one chapter. Let's see what happens next. See you next time.